When the most iconic sports car in the world gets a full redesign, you better believe there's going to be a crowd of hungry enthusiasts here to see the all-new 2020 Porsche 911. I'm at the 2018 Los Angeles International Auto Show. Let's take a first look. So when it comes to exterior design, Porsche is typically the car company that really doesn't make too many changes over the years. And so when they do make changes to a vehicle, a lot of the enthusiasts will usually cry about all the changes they've made to the front fascia. Now let's take a look at the all-new 992 Porsche 911. We've seen the old 991 since 2012, so an all-new version is basically long overdue. The front fascia really has a lot of new design features that will set it across as the all-new version. You can see the hood creases here are much different than the previous generation. You kind of have like a squared off look to it. You have standard LED headlights, which is actually a first for the 911. Usually Porsche gives you the xenons as standard. The LEDs are optional. I really love the new front fascia here, which kind of reminds me a lot of what they used to put on the GTS trims. It's got kind of that sport design front fascia here that really will set it off as a 911, but kind of bring it more into the modern era that Porsche is kind of showing. Now this 992 generation 911 is roughly the same size as the previous 991. Porsche really doesn't like to change the overall dimensions because this is a sports car. It needs to be lighter. Now, so at the side profile of the new 992 generation 911, I want to first talk about the wheels for this vehicle. These are 20-inch wheels, which will be standard on all models. Now, I want to be more specific. This is actually the S trim. Porsche is not showing the base Carrera just yet or the other versions. You can basically get a 20-inch wheel or on a 21-inch wheel at the back. It's a staggered wheel. Porsche said these are the largest standard wheels they've ever offered on a 911. Now, in terms of the dimension, Porsche doesn't like to mess with the size too much because this is a 911. Every body panel is now made from aluminum, so they were able to reduce the weight, increase the rigidity of the vehicle, and I also want to point out these new electrically actuated door handles here, which are nice and flush. If you unlock the car, they actually pop out, kind of similar to what Jaguar does, what Tesla does. So again, it's bringing the 911 into a much more modern era. Now, when you look at the rear of the new version, you can see this is where you can probably see the biggest changes to the new 911. It's got a completely redone rear end with the new wraparound taillights, which are actually included on every trim now. Trim before, you had to, in the previous generations, you had to at least go for the S, the 4 models, the all-wheel drive models to get that. Now Porsche has included that along with the wider rear track. You have the same vertical slats here for the actual air vents for the engine, because remember, this is a rear engine car. It's going to live underneath this panel over here. Now, speaking of the engine, right now Porsche only has specs for the S model. This is the same 3-liter turbocharged flat 6 boxer engine that's in the previous generation. Porsche has upped the power. It now makes 443 horsepower, up 23, and about 430 foot-pounds of torque. So again, up another 27 pound-feet of torque. So Porsche is always trying to improve the numbers. They're saying 0 to 60 times have been improved by 0.5 seconds. Basically, the base Carrera S will do 0 to 60 in 3.4 seconds. You can shave that number down to as little as 3.3 if you guys go for the PDK and the Sport Chrono. Now, speaking of which, the PDK has now been updated. It's now an 8-speed PDK, which is 1 gear more than the previous generation. You can still get a manual transmission, which Porsche says will be available at a later date. So stepping into the interior of the all-new 911, I have to say I am really blown away. It is entirely different than the previous 991.2, and basically the technology department is where Porsche really needed to update this car. The biggest change you're going to see, there's a lot more in terms of LCD screens. This is now a nearly 11-inch display here, which is increased versus the 7-inch. You have actual LCDs that are, going across from the tachometer. You still have a traditional analog tach, which is nice, but then you have an actual digital display here, which is basically taken off of the Panamera in the Cayenne. Now, one thing that's a pretty much area of controversy is this shifter. It's a very strange, stubby little knob shifter that controls the 8-speed PDK. You have a nice little toggle here that controls various other functions. They feel really high quality, so don't get me wrong there. This is really nice quality, but Porsche should have a traditional shifter like the previous generation. But again, this is just all change. People usually will bitch and moan when Porsche changes things, but I'm okay with this. It's probably going to take some getting used to. Keep in mind, if you guys want a manual, that is still also coming. Now, in terms of the materials, this one kind of has the upgraded interior, I want to say, because it's got the actual real leather across the dash. You have this aluminum carbon fiber look. It's real leather across everything. The seats, these are now the upgraded 18-way Plus Sport Plus seats, which are really comfortable. The leather feels good. You have this interesting cup holder here, which is different because Porsche typically puts it on the dashboard. You also have a nice little storage compartment here with 2 USB ports. It's kind of like a floating center stack here with the vents over here. You have a glove compartment here that's pretty big. It's damped, lined with felt as well. You do have one cup holder on the dash, but Porsche has completely redesigned the cup holders here, so that's very, very interesting. Now, a couple of other things that Porsche introduced basically automatic emergency braking is going to be standard equipment across the board on every trim of the 911. That's a first for Porsche. And they also introduced a lot of new safety features like this wet driver traction management system where, because remember, with a rear engine car, 911s can be a little tricky, skittish in the wet. Porsche says the computer system will recognize that and adjust the throttle, adjust the stability control programming when this vehicle does go on sale. Now, speaking of which, if you guys are looking to purchase one of these, you can go to your local Porsche dealership today and put down a pre-order on one. It's going to cost you a pretty good amount of money, though. This car starts for an S version. That's the only one that's available now. It starts at $114,000 for a base model. If you guys want all-wheel drive, add about $7,000 to the price tag, so a little over 120 grand. And that's before you add all the ludicrous options that Porsche basically allows you to do when you guys decide to buy one of these brands. But I hope you guys have enjoyed my quick first look on this 2020 Porsche 911. For Redline Reviews at the 2018 Los Angeles International Auto Show, I'm Sofyan Bey.